Okay, everyone, let's go over some of these breaking up the bakery problems for today. I think you guys are going to understand these a little bit better now because we've moved into some similar math. So I'm hoping these make sense a little bit more and are a little less complicated now. Now, don't get me wrong; these are supposed to be a challenge. I want to see what you guys can do, but I'm also hoping that they're fun and that they give you an idea of some real world application for these types of fractions. So okay, first let's look at this one. This is the mom's best chocolate chip cookies recipe. Now, the first one we have, let's do our work over here on this side. 2 1/4 or 1/4 cups of flour. Okay, so what they want us to do for the first one is turn it back into an improper fraction. Now, if you remember, the way that we do that is to take the whole number right here, multiply it by the denominator, and then add the numerator. So if you take the whole number, it's going to be 2 times 4, which equals 8, plus 1 equals 9. And remember, keep your denominator. So it's going to be 9/4. So it's as simple as that. Here's 9/4 for that. Now they want us to triple it. Now they're talking about tripling the mixed number, not the improper fraction. Now you can do it that way, but I want to see you do it this way because this is what we've been practicing this week with our new Pearson unit. So now you should know that what they're talking about, we're looking at 3 times 2 1/4. Okay. Now, if you remember from the week's lessons, when we were looking at using models for this, what they're talking about is they want to see 3 of the different. So now you're going to have 3 of these and more, right? Because we know each one of these is divided into fourths because our denominator is 4, which means that the whole is 4/4. So each one of these twos, both of those, are 4/4, right? So now you know you have in total, first, you have at least 2 of these filled in, right? Then you have 1/4 left over. Okay, so that's what 2 1/4 looks like. Now, they're talking about us having 3 of these, right? So if you want to draw them out to help you remember how to do it, that's a good method right now. We'll break these up again here. And same thing. If it helps you to color them in to remember, then perfect. Right? And then you'll need one more because we're talking about tripling it, which means that there are 3 of these. Okay, here we go. Once again, color those in. And there you go. Now what do you have? Looks like you have, how many different holes do you have? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you know there are 6. And then you have 3/4, right? Now, another way, of course, to look at that is to look at it as the problem is right here. You don't necessarily have to draw these out. And for some of you, you're probably not drawing them out. I think a number of you are able to do this in your heads by now. So if you're going to look at it that way, then you would just say 3 times 2 is 6, and 3 times 1 is 3. So 6 3/4. And that would be the flour tripled. So let's go ahead and write that over here. Now, what about quadrupled? Because now they're asking us for 4 times 2 1/4, right? Well, like I said, if it helps you to continue drawing these out, go ahead and do that. You're going to end up with, and remember, just because these don't look very good doesn't mean they're not right. They're still there as long as you have 4 parts. It's okay if they're not drawn perfectly well. Okay, here we go. And now what do you have? Well, you've got 8 and look what you have. What happens when you have 4/4? Well, you know what you have. It means that the total is 9. So if you quadruple the flour, your total is 9 cups. Okay, so now let's look at those chocolate chips. Now, if you notice, they've already given us an improper fraction. They've given us 7/4, which we know is improper because the numerator is greater than the denominator. And you always want your denominator to be greater than your numerator. So we're going to have to figure out how many times 4 goes into 7. Well, 4 goes into 7 one time, right? Now, how many are left over? If you got 3/4, then you would be correct. So our original amount of chocolate chips is going to be 1 and 3/4. Now, what about tripled? That means they want us to do this. 3 times 1 and 3/4. Okay, so you can draw it out like we did with the last one, or you can do it this way. What's 3 times 1? It's 3. And what is 3 times 3? That's 9. Now, you know you've got a bit of a problem here, right? Because, again, we have an improper fraction as part of our mixed number. The 9 is greater than the 4, and that means we need to figure out how many times 4 can go into 9. Well, 4 goes into 9 2 times, because 4 times 2 equals 8, and that leaves you with 1 left over. But need to add these two, right? So 3 plus 2 equals 5, which means that your answer is 5 and 1/4. So tripled, we have 5 and 1/4 cup of chocolate chips right there. Okay, now what about quadrupled? That means they want 4. Quad means 4. So 4 times 1 and 3/4 equals, let's look at it this way, 4 times 1 and 4 times 3. Okay, so you have 4. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12/4. Now we have a problem, right? We have a problem because, again, our numerator is greater than our denominator. So how many times does 4 go into 12? Well, we already know that, right? Because we did 4 times 12. So we know that it goes in 3 times, which means that our answer is going to be 3 plus 4, which equals 7. So it means that quadrupled, we have 7 cups of chocolate chips. Okay. If at any point you guys need to go back, pause, and rewatch a section of this, please do, if I'm going too fast. Okay, so for the sugar, they didn't give us the original amount, and they didn't give us the improper fraction. They gave us the tripled amount, and the tripled amount is 1 cup. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit complicated, right? Well, let's look at that. Let's say this right here is 1 whole cup. Okay, well, if 1 cup is the tripled amount, that means we're going to break this into 3s. And that means we've got 3 sections where each one is 1/3. So that should give you a hint as to what our answer is right here, right? Right? Okay. That means that we have, let's try it out. Always double check. Let's see if it works. Now all you're doing is multiplying just that top number, which is 3/3, which equals 1 cup. So that means that our answer for the original amount of sugar, is 1/3 cup. Okay, so now as an improper fraction, how would we do that one as an improper fraction? Can we? Because it looks to me like the only version of an improper fraction we could do would be 3/3, which equals 1, and that's our tripled amount. So this one is kind of a trick question because it means there really is no improper fraction for this one. So you can just write 1/3 right there. Straighten out that 1 a little bit. Now we already have the tripled amount. Okay, now what about the quadrupled amount? Now remember, that's going to be 4 times 1/3 cup. all you have to do is multiply that whole number by the numerator up here. You're going to end up with 4/3. That is an improper fraction, so you're going to have to figure out how many times does 3 go into 4. It goes on one time, and there's only one left over. So your quadrupled amount is 1 and 1/3. Now, that should also be kind of obvious here when you look at the drawing that we have too, because all you're doing is adding one more. And now you've got 4 1/3 cups. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So this next one, they gave us an original amount. So we know how much brown sugar we have. We have 2/3. 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar. Okay, now they want this as an improper fraction. Well, once again, when you look at something like this, can you do it as an improper fraction, or is this asking you for, is this a trick question, kind of like the other one? Well, let's take a look at it. We don't have any holes. All we have is 2/3. So you're just going to go ahead and write 2/3 right there. Now for the tripled amount, though, that we can do. That's going to be 3 times 2/3. Again, multiply that whole number by your numerator, and you're going to end up with 6/3, which is an improper fraction, so you've got to figure out how many times does 3 go into 6. Well, you know it goes in 2 times, and it also means that you have nothing left over, right? So your tripled amount is going to be 2 cups. Now, another way, of course, of looking at that would be to look at, let's draw these out. We know our whole is going to be 3, right? Broken into thirds. Because our denominator is a 3. That's your hint right there. Now, you know you have got 2/3 for the original amount, right? Well, they want you to have 3 of these. Ignore this one down here. They want you to have 3 of these. So then what happens? Well, if you were to look at it drawn out a little bit differently, here's your original one, right? 2/3. Now you're adding another one, which is already 3/3, which is 1 whole, and another one, and another one, and one more, if we can fit it in over there, which is another 3/3, which also equals 1, and 1 plus 1 equals 2. So your total is 2 cups. Okay, now, so again, 4. So now we're going to look at 4 times 2/3 cups. 4 times 2, just doing the whole number by the numerator, is 8/3. Improper. Again, numerator is too great, too big. It's bigger than our denominator. So how many times does 3 go into 8? Well, it only goes in there 2 times, because 3 times 2 is 6. So it goes in there 2 times. And how many do you have left over if you have 6? Well, you have 2/3. So our quadruple amount is 2 and 2/3. Okay. Now, what about with our vanilla? So for the vanilla, the original amount is not given to us, but they did give us the improper fraction. And our improper fraction is 3/2. And those are teaspoons right there. 3/2. Okay. Well, let's turn this back into let's break down this improper fraction, turn it into a mixed number. How many times does 2 go into 3? Well, it goes in 1 time. And what do you have left over? You've got 1. So 1 1/2 teaspoons. 1 1/2 teaspoons. Let's make that a little bit bigger there. That's what you have for your vanilla. Okay, now that we know that that original amount, let's go ahead and take that and let's triple it. 3 times 1 1/2. This time you're going to take the whole numbers, multiply those. That's 3. Multiply that whole number by the numerator over here, also 3/2. Now you've got a problem, right? An improper fraction, which we already know that 3/2 equals 1 1/2. Now you're going to also add 3 to it. So now you're going to end up with 4 1/2. Okay, and that's your tripled amount, 4 and 1/2 teaspoons. Again, not cups, that would be a lot. And then the quadrupled amount, 4 times 1 and 1/2. Well, that's going to be 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 1 is 4, and you've got 4 over 2. Again, proper fraction, you're going to have to change that one. Change that into a mixed number. Let's erase these top ones here. And if you do that, you're going to look at how many times does 2 go into 4. Well, it goes in twice, right? Which is 4, which means that our total here is going to be 4 plus 2, which is 6. So our quadrupled amount is going to be 6 teaspoons. Okay, now what about... Let's skip over that second brown sugar one there because I don't know why, but there is a duplicate here, right? Actually, there are actually 2 duplicates. Both of these are the same, the brown sugar and the vanilla. So if you see both those on your side, go ahead and cross out those right there. And let's look at the salt. And yes, in case you're wondering, salt does go into chocolate chip cookies. Actually kind of helps bring out some of the sweetness. So, okay, you've got 1/8 of a teaspoon. Not very much. It's a very small amount. 1/8 of a teaspoon. Now, can you turn that into an improper fraction? No. It's going to stay 1/8. Now, what is 3 times 1/8? 3 times 1/8. Now, you can draw these out, or you can do it this way. Take the whole number, multiply it by the numerator. Then you've got 3/8, right? And that makes sense. That would be your tripled amount. Now, with the quadrupled amount, you're going to do 4 times 1/8. Same thing. Take that whole number, multiply it by the numerator right here, and you're going to end up with 4/8. But 4/8 can also be broken down, right? It can be simplified because you can find a common factor here, or you can find a common multiple. You can do both of those things actually for these. But the common factor you could say is 2. And 4 divided by 2 is going to be 2. 8 divided by 2 is going to be 4. Now you can go even further, right? And you can make it into 1/2. 1/2 teaspoon. Okay, so now let's go ahead and erase that, and then let's move down and take a look at the next section down here. In the analyzing your data section of these, those are actually pretty challenging. So I'll be very happy to see if you guys get that. So then in the original recipe, how many cups of flour, chocolate chip sugar, and brown sugar was there all together? Well, let's scroll back up. Let's make sure we have that information. Okay, so we're looking for, in the original recipe, how many cups of flour did we have? How many cups of flour? We had 2 and 1/4 cups, right? That's your flour. Now for the chocolate chips, you had 1 and 3/4 cups. We'll just write CC, chocolate chips. And then you had, for the sugar, you had 1/3 cup, and that's sugar. And then for the brown sugar, you had 2/3 of a cup. And that's brown sugar. Okay. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and we're going to add all of these things up. So 2 and 1/4 plus 1 and 3/4. We'll start with that. And we will go ahead and add the whole numbers here. You've got 3. And now you've got 4 over 4. Well, that equals 1, right? So now you're looking at 3 plus 1 equals 4. So just with these two alone, you've got 4 cups, right? And then for this one, let's go ahead and take a look at this. 1/3 plus 2/3 equals 3/3, which once again, equals 1 whole. So that means in total, you're looking at 4 plus 1 equals 5. 5 cups of ingredients. So your answer for that one, and if you want to be really good about it, go ahead and write in 5 cups. Okay. Now in the quadrupled recipe, now they're getting a little crazier on us here. So let's look at that one. Let's erase what we have here so we have a little more room. Okay. And let's look at that. So they're asking for, in the quadrupled recipe, how many teaspoons of vanilla? Well, in the quadrupled recipe, we had 6 teaspoons of vanilla and salt. Okay. So we had a half teaspoon in the quadrupled recipe of salt. So what they're really asking for is 6 plus 1/2, which here means 6 and 1/2. 6 and 1/2 teaspoons. And that would be both, that's in the quadrupled recipe with the vanilla and salt together. Okay. Now they're asking you to use some of those symbols that you guys are really familiar with at this point. And they want to know the amount of sugar compared to brown sugar. Is it greater than, less than, or equal to? So you've got sugar on this side, and you have brown sugar on this side. Now for the sugar, and we're talking about the original recipe here. So you've got 1/3 cup, and then the brown sugar, you have 2/3 of a cup. So obviously in this situation where you have 1/3 versus 2/3, 2/3 is greater. So you're going to say that the sugar is less than the brown sugar. Okay. Now, they want to know in the original recipe, no, excuse me, I apologize. In the tripled recipe, this is why I always say to double check, make sure you understand what they're asking. Brown sugar and regular sugar. They want us to add together the tripled amounts. So if there's 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of sugar, let's rewrite that there. 1 cup of sugar, and you have, with the triple amount, 2 cups of brown sugar. Well, that one's pretty easy, right? You're going to end up with 3 cups of both types of sugar together. Okay, and that is the end of the first page of today's Breaking Up the Bakery assignment. That would be Get Busy Baking 1, Mom's Best Chocolate Chip Cookies. And if you have any questions about that one, let me know.